30 kilometers from French Bayonne lies the picturesque little village of La Bastide-Clarence with fewer than 1,000 inhabitants. This place belongs to the most beautiful villages of France. Here the farming family Rousel settled. Eva, Pascal and their sons, the older Jan and the younger Kevin. They successfully mastered rural life until the 20th of February 2016. On this day, the younger of the brothers called the emergency service because of an incident in the house. The main participants of the case began to blame each other, which significantly complicated the work of the investigators. Around noon, law enforcement officers and paramedics arrived in La Bastide-Clarence. One of the brothers tried to help the parents, but without success. The arriving rescue helicopter could not help anymore either. During the house inspection, the investigators noticed a festively set table. It turned out that the family had come together to celebrate Jan's birthday. The police brought the brothers and other guests to the station to clarify the circumstances of the incident. Eva Rousel was 55 years old. This friendly woman took care of the household and managed the family farm. She handled the finances, settled organizational questions, often worked until late, and put much energy into the family business. The 54-year-old Pascal stood at the head of the family and did the main work. Additionally, he worked as an insurance inspector and secured a stable income for the family. He met his future wife during his studies. Pascal came from Poland to study economics, and Eva studied international law. After getting to know each other, they stayed together and married after university graduation. In the picturesque village of La Bastide-Clarence, the Rousel family settled. The couple had 2 sons, the older John and the younger Kevin. When the incident happened, the law enforcement officers found Jan frozen in the yard. He sat motionless on a chair but was physically unharmed. He was taken to the hospital for examination. Kevin had already started his own family at this time. He lived with his wife Sophia nearby in Asperen, only 10 minutes' drive from the parental home. The couple had a daughter named Alice. Sophia was also present during the incident and was brought to the station for questioning together with her daughter. The disturbed Alice was then picked up by her great-grandmother. According to Kevin, a serious conflict arose between the parents because of infidelity suspicions. He told that he was with them for part of the evening and noticed the growing tension. When the father received certain information about his wife, he left the living room, returned with a revolver from his study and used the weapon directly during the family meal. Kevin tried, according to his own statements, to stop his father out of concern for further rash actions. During the struggle for the revolver, several more shots were fired. The young man insisted he had no evil intention. Everything had happened accidentally during the attempt to disarm the father. In panic, he left the crime scene together with his wife and daughter, after which they turned to the police. This version raised doubts among the investigators. They knew the family of Pascal and Eva Rousel well, who for 30 years had been considered a model for family relationships in which love and mutual respect prevailed. The acquaintances could not believe that Eva had a secret relationship. Family friends said they had never noticed even the slightest disagreements between the spouses. A separation was out of the question. They seemed to be a very happy couple. It was even harder to imagine that Pascal could harm his wife. What had happened was a shock for everyone, especially after Kevin's story. The investigators quickly discovered inconsistencies in the son's statements. The experts conducted a thorough examination. Eva had a serious injury in the chest area that affected an important blood vessel. This data corresponded with Kevin's version. However, the examination of Pascal raised doubts about the randomness of the incident. 3 precise hits were found, on the neck, back and face. This indicated intentional actions from different positions, with the weapon obviously not being in his hands. After clarifying these details, the law enforcement officers took the 2 brothers under observation and spoke once more with Kevin's wife, Sophia. These 3 were present during the incident, and presumably one of them was involved in what happened. At this moment, Kevin changed his story and pointed to Jan. He explained that he had initially concealed the truth out of shock and concern for his safety. According to his words, his brother was characterized by uncontrolled behavior and frequent outbursts of aggression. Kevin reported that Jan had long shown disrespect toward the parents, especially the mother, and allowed himself rudeness and even violence. However, no one had suspected that the situation would end this way. Kevin's wife confirmed her husband's story. According to her words, Jan behaved strangely on the day of the family meeting. Soon he began to show aggression against those present, and then appeared with a weapon. The young man shouted threats against all gathered. A confrontation occurred in which the brothers' parents fell into a critical condition. Kevin managed to take the revolver away from his brother. Meanwhile, Jan described a completely different version of events in the next room. His clothing was dirty, which he explained with attempts to help the parents. During the conversation with the police, he had clear difficulties. Jan was in a slowed state, although the medical examination showed no abnormalities. He spoke little and incoherently, denied his involvement in the incident, and described himself as injured. Remarkable was that the older brother maintained amazing calm when he reported on the events of the evening. According to his version, Kevin had the weapon. He was the one who caused the incident and now tries to shift the responsibility onto his brother. The case became increasingly confusing. The brothers accused each other, and it was difficult to determine who was telling the truth. There was no direct evidence for the guilt of either of them. Out of concern for the safety of the city residents and the surviving relatives, the court ordered Jan Rousel to be kept in custody until all circumstances were clarified. Jan was brought to the Mont-de-Marsan prison, which was 100 kilometers from the crime scene. There, specialists for mental health began to work with him. The examination showed that the older brother had developmental peculiarities that no one had noticed before. He was diagnosed with a severe form of autism, Asperger's syndrome. In reality, the young man possessed an exceptional mind, learned to read early, and had excellent performance in special school. However, his condition was accompanied by behavioral difficulties. People with this syndrome live as if according to a predetermined program. They can handle information and work well, but need constant accompaniment in normal life. This syndrome is rare, which made Jan particularly interesting for the prison specialists. The main characteristic of his condition is the almost complete absence of external emotional reactions. The person does not smile, shows neither joy nor sadness. This explained Jan's unusual composure during the conversations with the investigators. The developmental peculiarities showed themselves from birth, but the family lived in a small, remote village, and no one thought of doctor visits. Additionally, little was known about autism at that time. The parents believed Jan simply had such a character. The specialists who observed Jan noticed that his condition called into question the older brother's version. People with Asperger's syndrome are usually very calm and reserved and rarely show hostility toward others. Overall, Jan made a pleasant impression and never showed negative reactions toward relatives or strangers. Acquaintances of the family confirmed his balance and good relationship with his parents. Against this background, it became clear that Kevin was concealing something. What also spoke for Jan was that he remained at the scene and tried to help his parents, while Kevin stayed away. The experts pointed out that people with Asperger's syndrome are normally very honest. This indicated that Jan's story could be more credible than his brother's version, although Kevin's wife confirmed every one of his words. The police had to not only verify the statements of both, but also determine Sophia's possible role in the incident, should suspicion fall on her husband. Many witnesses who knew the family described Jan as a friendly and calm person who got along well with his parents and lived with them. Kevin's relationship with his parents, on the other hand, was tense. They frequently argued about trivial matters. The investigators began to examine the lives of Kevin and his wife Sophia more closely. Sophia Bodnarczuk met Kevin on the internet in the year 2011. At that time, she had just finished school, and Kevin was somewhat older. Sophia's beauty and intelligence immediately drew his attention. She came from the small settlement Topar in Kazakhstan, where fewer than 10,000 people lived. After half a year of correspondence, the young man invited her to France, and she came. Their relationship developed rapidly. Only 2 weeks after meeting in person, they were already married. The young couple had practically no means of living. Kevin was just trying to find a stable source of income, and Sophia also had no steady work. Kevin's parents supported them completely, even organized the wedding with their own money. Shortly before the sad events, the parents decided to push their son toward independence, since unlike his brother Jan, he was completely healthy and could work. Sophia could also have found employment, but both did not even try to look for work. Therefore, the family father decided to stop their financial support. Pascal supported a large family: his wife, 2 sons, the daughter-in-law, and their small daughter. He found a rental apartment in Aspirin for the young people, paid the rent, food, and other expenses. Kevin and Sophia received the parents' decision extremely negatively. They began threatening Eva and Pascal that they would move to Kazakhstan, 7,000 kilometers away, and would not allow them to see their beloved granddaughter. When that did not work, the situation became even more tense. Kevin's behavior worried the parents so much that they shared their concerns with family friends. The suspicions against the couple Kevin and Sophia increased, but solid evidence was required for official measures. A month after the incident, the investigators invited Sophia again for a conversation. The young woman shared information about her family's difficult financial situation. Kevin could not find work, and his father had stopped the financial support. Moreover, it was often mentioned that the entire fortune would go to Jan. Sophia noted that despite the tense situation, they maintained a cordial relationship with Eva, who continued to support them, although the family head remained cold toward them. The breakthrough came during the search of the married couple's apartment. In Kevin's clothing bag, a crumpled sheet was found with a detailed plan written with a black pen. The document revealed the younger brother's intentions toward the entire family, including the older brother. This became the decisive evidence for Kevin's arrest. The investigators suspected that Jan simply had the luck to escape the fate of his parents. Kevin's plan obviously consisted of eliminating all claimants to the family fortune. Sophia unwittingly helped in solving the case. Before her questioning, the investigators knew nothing about the inheritance situation, which was estimated at about 2 million euros. The found records also showed that the perpetrator wanted to cover his tracks through a house fire. The perpetrator's plan was fortunately not carried out to the end. Something prevented its execution. During the investigation, it turned out that the suspect's wife could be involved in the incident. On the 1st of April 2016, she was taken into custody as a possible accomplice. The young mother categorically denied her involvement. The grandmother of Kevin and Jan, the 84-year-old mother of Pascal, was shattered by how far the family disputes had gone. She wanted to find out the truth about what had happened. At this point, Jan, who had been falsely suspected, had already been released. Because of the imprisonment, he could not even say goodbye to his parents. Jan hoped for a just decision regarding his brother and remained living with his grandmother. After several conversations with the law enforcement officers and specialists, it was possible to reconstruct the events of that February day. Jan's statements were decisive. The day before, Kevin had agreed to meet with his parents on the 20th of February 2016, on Jan's birthday. Kevin suggested that the family come together to discuss the accumulated differences. The parents agreed to the meeting for reconciliation. Jan was in an elevated mood from the morning. He received gifts from his parents and waited impatiently for his brother to come with his wife so they could sit together at the festive table. Soon Kevin appeared at the house with his wife and daughter. Kevin appeared in the house with a new large bag whose contents were disturbing. However, no one paid special attention to it. The family head Pascal was delayed in his return from a business trip to another city. He entered the house last through the kitchen door, where he met Kevin. They had a brief conversation. At the moment when Pascal was distracted, the son took a revolver from the bag and unexpectedly fired 2 shots from behind. However, Pascal proved to be stronger than Kevin had suspected. He managed to turn around and try to disarm the attacker, but because of the injuries he had suffered, his strength quickly faded. He tried to reach the gun cabinet in the office but could not and fell down. Kevin fired the fatal shot. At this time, Sophia with her daughter Jan and Eva were in the living room. Everything happened so quickly that they could not react to the noise. When they understood what was happening, Jan and Eva rushed to the kitchen. When they saw the situation, they faced Kevin, who pointed the weapon at them. Jan noticed the flash, and at that moment his mother was hit in the chest. Assuming he was next, the young man threw himself at his younger brother. During the fight, another shot fell that missed its target. By chance, this was the last bullet. Kevin had loaded the revolver with only 5 cartridges. This surprised him, especially when Jan gained the upper hand in the fight. Kevin had only flight left. Sophia, instead of helping the injured Eva, began searching in her bags for something, presumably for valuables for the impending flight. But the search remained unsuccessful. Kevin fled hastily with his wife and daughter from the house, fleeing from the angry brother. They drove away by car, but did not get far. Their plan had failed. The brother had survived. They could not overpower him. They got no money. Meanwhile, Jan tried to help his parents. In the haste, the couple left many traces. They did not even manage to use the prepared liquids for trace removal. Finally, they decided to change their plan. Instead of fleeing, they decided to accuse the autistic brother Jan, assuming he could not justify himself, and turn to the police themselves. They believed their version would be convincing for the investigation, but their plan failed, and the law enforcement agencies were able to uncover the truth. The investigators were particularly shaken that Kevin and Sophia acted in the presence of their small daughter. This raised serious questions about their state of mind. Therefore, the couple was sent for examination to specialists, which they successfully passed. The doctor declared them fit to stand trial. Initially, the spouses denied any involvement in the incident, but later Kevin changed his position. He expressed regret about what had happened and confessed that he missed his parents. On the 10th of December 2018, almost 3 years after the family tragedy in the Rousel house, those responsible appeared in court. For the first time, the brothers met since that fateful day. Great tension prevailed in the courtroom. It particularly affected Jan's grandmother, Jazette, who could not cope with the premature loss of her son. Despite years of deception, Kevin confessed his guilt at the beginning of the trial. He also admitted that he had previously lied to the investigators about almost everything. According to Kevin, his wife knew about the plans in advance. Furthermore, he claimed that she had pushed him to it because of the inheritance, and called her an accomplice. Sophia continued to deny everything and insisted on her innocence. Kevin's accusations came as a surprise to the young woman and were, as she said, a deep disappointment. Sophia filed for divorce and began attending church, becoming very religious. After 5 days of the trial, Sophia felt unwell. It turned out that she had not taken any food the entire time, which led to unconsciousness. She was urgently taken to the hospital. On the same day, Kevin was transferred to a psychiatric clinic after an incident in his cell. He undertook dangerous actions after learning about the divorce from Sophia and her new relationship. His condition deteriorated so much that he claimed to have a secret twin brother who was allegedly involved in the incident. However, the DNA analysis and fingerprints on the found revolver confirmed his involvement. The trial had to be postponed due to the absence of the trial participants. Sophia was later allowed to temporarily leave isolation to meet her daughter. Kevin attempted to escape from prison twice, but unsuccessfully. In court, Brother Jan shared his feelings about the loss of his relatives, who had always supported him. Despite the incident, he tried to return to a normal life. Sophia was found guilty of involvement in the incident and sentenced to 20 years in prison, but she appealed. In March 2020, the trial was suspended because of the pandemic shortly before the verdict against Kevin. The hearings were not resumed until October 2022. Finally, Kevin Rousel was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Additionally, he received 5 years for an escape attempt in which he held a nurse hostage. After that, a new trial against Sophia began. Her mother and sister came from Kazakhstan to support her. The accused claimed she had no financial difficulties and money had never been her top priority. Sophia denied any involvement in the incident and assured that she had no idea about Kevin's plans. Otherwise, she would have tried to stop him. According to her words, she knew nothing about their difficult financial situation, since her husband took care of all finances and she assumed that their support was sufficient. Sophia mentioned the joint gun purchase. She thought the revolver was a gift for Kevin's father, so she attached no importance to it. Thanks to Kevin's new statement that he had acted alone, Sophia Bodnarczuk was acquitted. No further evidence was found against her and she was released. Josette, Pascal's 84-year-old mother, was outraged by this decision. Her grandson Jean claimed that Sophia had helped Kevin that day. According to Josette, Eva and Pascal complained about Sophia's inappropriate jokes about the inheritance. The family was convinced that Sophia had pushed Kevin because she was impatient for the inheritance and manipulated her husband, but escaped responsibility. Jan recently told journalists that after losing his relatives, all that remained for him was to continue living. The story of two young hearts began in the last months of the year 2003. Liana Friedenbach and Philippe Caffey ventured on a romantic adventure in the wilderness. Their feelings for each other had been blossoming for several months, but the school walls were the only place of their meetings. The parents were strictly against their relationship because of their age. The prohibitions only drove the teenagers to more determined action. They developed a sophisticated plan. Philippe told his family about a hike with friends, while Liana told her family about a trip to Il Habela with the church youth group. Parental trust was won, and before the young people opened the possibility of spending a whole week together. Their choice fell on the secluded areas of Embu-Guaçu in the vicinity of Greater São Paulo, Brazil. They dreamed of a paradisiacal stay for two, but fate had a meeting with people in store for them whose intentions were anything but good. Their bright dreams of a romantic adventure met harsh reality. For the young travelers, this was a moment of true triumph. Finally, they could be together without judgmental looks and constant prohibitions. Their romance developed within the school walls, because only there could they see each other freely. The age difference, Liana was 16 and Philippe 19, became a stumbling block in relationships with the families. On the 31st of October 2003, the couple set off. Despite the modest budget, they found a way out. They used the right to free travel on public transport to São Paulo. The journey began in the dark to avoid encounters with acquaintances. Until the early morning of the 31st of October, the young people waited at the bus station in São Paulo. The next stage took them to another bus. Around 9 o'clock in the morning, they reached Embu-Guaçu, from where they reached the tiny village of Santa Rita with another ride. Their final destination was a secluded place nearby which they had to reach on foot. The abandoned natural corner appeared to them as the ideal place for their togetherness, a deserted area far from civilization. The young lovers were convinced they had found their paradise. The young couple covered approximately 4.5 kilometers on foot before they found the ideal resting place, an old abandoned building with an intact roof. Here they decided to set up their temporary camp. Liana and Philippe, enchanted by the picturesque beauty of this natural spot, dreamed of spending a whole week here to enjoy each other's company and the surrounding beauty. On the way to the chosen location, the couple crossed a small settlement of locals who led a very modest life in the forest. The appearance of the couple involuntarily attracted the attention of the residents. Elegant clothing, several expensive bags, and especially Liana's striking beauty gave the impression of wealthy city dwellers who wanted to indulge in a forest adventure. At the same time, two locals were fishing nearby, Paul Cesar de Silva Marques, called Pernambuco, and Roberto Aparecida Alves Scarloso, known as Champinha. They belonged to a small group organized by Champinha. When they noticed the young people setting up their camp in a remote location, the two began to observe the couple closely. In their thoughts, an evil plan gradually formed, which soon turned into concrete actions. After making sure that no one else was nearby, they decided to approach the camp in the afternoon. Armed with a tropical tool, the uninvited guests surprised the unsuspecting couple. Liana and Felipe, finding themselves in a hopeless situation, could not defend themselves. Originally, the uninvited guests hoped to find valuables, as they suspected that such wealthy-looking people must have money or jewelry with them. Although they were disappointed in their expectations, they did not abandon their intentions. They developed a new idea. They wanted to demand material compensation for the return of the young people. However, it did not go beyond general considerations. They lacked the acumen to think through the details of their plan. Initially, the couple was taken to an old abandoned house near their stopping point. The room looked unattractive and uninhabitable, but this was only the beginning of their trials. After closer consideration, the perpetrators decided that this place was not safe enough for their purposes. Additionally, there was no one here who could supervise the detained people, so they went in search of a more suitable hiding place. Liana and Filippo were soon moved to another room, which was also located in this area. The owner of this place was an acquaintance of the criminals, who later joined them. Despite the presence of the house owner, the situation here was no better than before. Disorder reigned everywhere. The room was in an extremely neglected state. Nevertheless, this place seemed more suitable for their undertaking to the perpetrators. Liana told them that she came from a wealthy family and suggested demanding money for their release. This corresponded to the truth. She was the daughter of the well-known lawyer Ari Friedenbach. Her family enjoyed respect and had a good position in the city. The perpetrators were excited by the prospect of receiving a large sum for the couple. Presumably, Liana's suggestion prolonged their lives, but at the same time also their trials. They were housed in different rooms of the house. That night, Pernambuco and Champigny inflicted severe suffering on Liana, while Filippo was behind the wall and could not help due to his restricted freedom of movement. The dawn of the next day surprised them in the forest. Pernambuco and Champigny led the young people deep into the thicket. Fate decided that it would not be Liana who would end her path first. At one moment, Pernambuco and Philip separated from the main group and penetrated ever deeper into the forest solitude. Soon a bang broke the morning silence. Later, locals discovered a trace of these events in a ravine on a forest path, not far from the place where the young people were held. Everything happened in the depths of the forest. When the perpetrators learned of the young man's modest origins, it became clear to them there was no hope for material gain. Additionally, he could cause additional difficulties, so they decided to act immediately. Liana was located apart, but the bang penetrated to her. A disturbing premonition indicated something irrevocable had happened. When asked about Philip's whereabouts, Chempi answered that the young man had been released. But the young woman sensed that was not the truth. She understood. Such a risk would have been unjustified for the perpetrators. At this moment, she was not yet aware of how little time she had left. When Pernambuco returned, Liana found herself alone with two criminals. They did not even try to contact her father about the money. They simply did not know how to make it safe for themselves. The inexperienced criminals, who hoped for easy money, failed even at this task. Now they considered what to do with Liana. The young woman's beauty attracted them. Thoughts arose of keeping her with them. But the fear of discovery indicated This could not continue for long. 3 days after Liana's departure, her father made a disturbing discovery when he tried to contact his daughter. She was not with the church group of her friends as originally assumed. The man was extremely concerned when he learned of the secret disappearance of the lovers. Particularly alarming was that neither his daughter nor her chosen one were reachable. At this point, the parents did not yet suspect what serious situation their daughter was in. As a lawyer, Ari used his professional contacts to trace his daughter's movements. It turned out that the couple had gone to the forest near Santa Rita. The last signal from Liana's phone came from there. A friend confirmed this information, although she did not know the exact location of the young people's camp. The worried father turned to law enforcement and reported the disappearance of the young couple. The lawyer used his connections to speed up the search operation in the said forest. The rescue team arrived promptly in the area that the friends of the missing persons had reported. On site, they found an abandoned camp with a damaged tent and scattered objects. The situation seemed suspicious. The tent had been cut open with a sharp object and not damaged by natural influences. It was obvious that strangers were involved in the disappearance. At the location, they found Liana's personal items: clothing, wallet, and a discharged phone. During this time, Antonio Quintana Silva and his friend, Analdo Perez, arrived at an unknown location. Champigno introduced the present young woman as his companion and invited his friend to join them. When the situation took a particularly serious turn, Liana's father decided to draw national press attention to what was happening. The more the case attracted public attention, the more extensive the search operation became. Thanks to a compassionate entrepreneur who was deeply moved by this story, an air operation for information distribution could be organized. From his private helicopter, 5,000 flyers with photos of Liana and Philippa were distributed over the region. The search group worked actively in the local communities and spread information about the missing teenagers. A substantial reward was offered for any useful tip. Some residents confirmed that they had indeed seen the young people in the forest, but these statements provided no concrete clues. While volunteers and professional search teams examined the area around the discovered campsite of the teenagers, the criminal group, fearing discovery, hastily left the forest area. They moved to the house of Antonio Matios de Boros. In an attempt to create the appearance of a normal life, they went fishing. Champigna even shared his sweater with Liana. In the evening, they were visited by Champigna's older brother. The parents were worried about their son's long absence. During the meeting with his brother, Champigna again introduced Liana as his girlfriend. He was obviously proud of this invention, while the girl sat silently and did not raise her eyes. The brother understood the true situation but decided to remain silent. During the conversation, the brother informed about the large-scale search operation in the region, which seriously worried the group. When they realized the proximity of the search groups, they decided to urgently change location. Champigna announced to everyone that he would take the girl to the bus station. In the early morning of the 5th of November 2003, they set out for the station and penetrated deep into the forest. However, Champigna had completely different intentions. He wanted to leave no witnesses. After the incident, Champigna hurried back to his house. After changing clothes, he carefully hid the evidence in an old well next to his house, hoping they would never be discovered. On the 10th of November, 5 days later, however, a young woman was found in the forest. She was still wearing the same hooded sweater that belonged to Champigna. The investigation revealed biological traces on it. The law enforcement agencies conducted a thorough investigation and reconstructed the movements of all involved. They searched every hut where the suspects had stayed, which helped identify all participants in the incident. The investigators could quickly determine the whereabouts of the entire group. After the arrest, important evidence was found during the search of Champigna's house. The investigation confirmed traces of both Champigna and Liana on it. During interrogation, the young man told of his actions with unexpected openness. According to his words, he had immediately noticed Liana and wanted her to belong only to him. However, Due to the active measures of law enforcement agencies, the situation got out of control. It turned out that the 16-year-old Champigny led the group, although he was the youngest among those involved. The others were already of age. It is remarkable that he was the same age as Liana. According to the state legislation, Champigny was placed in a special facility for juveniles in northern São Paulo due to his young age. According to current law, he must remain there until reaching the 21st year of life. The court proceedings in this sensational case began only in mid-2006. The court sentenced the owner of the first building where Liana was held, Antonio Caetano da Silva, to 124 years of isolation from society. He was found guilty of being involved in a series of crimes against the young woman. Arnaldo Pires received a sentence of 47 years for similar acts. Antonio Matias de Barras was sentenced to 7 years and 9 months for aiding and concealing important investigation objects. The proceedings against the main participants, Pernambuco and Champigny, dragged on until autumn 2007. The story achieved great public attention in Brazil through the media activity of Liana's father. Society was shocked by the actions of the young criminals toward the young couple. By court decision, Pernambuco received 110 years in prison. The situation with Champigny proved more complex. The young leader of the group was in a juvenile facility. His unusual behavior and increased excitability led to several examinations by specialists organized by the defense. The lawyers also emphasized Champigny's difficult upbringing conditions in a low-income family. Developmental peculiarities and a specific personality disorder were identified in the young criminal. Each of these peculiarities can influence a person's behavior, and their combination complicates social adaptation. As a result, Champigny was transferred to a specialized medical facility where people with mental peculiarities are rehabilitated. The legislation did not provide for stricter measures in his case. The court decision triggered a wave of public outrage due to the sentence being perceived as too mild. People demanded a harsher verdict and longer isolation of the perpetrator from society. The citizens' outrage became a catalyst for reviewing the existing legal system. However, the new changes had no impact on Champigny's case, as the incident occurred before their adoption. Currently, he continues to be in a specialized medical facility under the supervision of professionals. The regional government took responsibility for his maintenance. It is noteworthy that Champigny himself shows no signs of recognizing the seriousness of his actions. At the same time, he repeatedly filed applications for release, claiming that the treatment had shown positive results, and he no longer posed a danger to others. Court instances of 3 levels consistently rejected his applications. Moreover, his behavior showed no signs of improvement. A telling incident occurred in the year 2007 when he attempted to leave the facility without permission in the early morning hours. It turned out that he had a helper inside the clinic, with whom they used a ladder to overcome the 7-meter-high wall. Thanks to the quick work of the law enforcement officers, he was found after 11 hours, preventing possible consequences. After this incident, he was returned to the medical facility. Despite the severity of his crimes, Champigny's accommodation proved very comfortable. On the 17th of December 2007, journalists from a television station prepared a report about his stay in the facility and showed his daily life. He had at his disposal a cozy room with a soft sofa and a large 29-inch television. Meals are provided 5 times daily according to an individual menu developed by a professional nutritionist. His accommodation conditions differ significantly from the circumstances in which those affected by his actions found themselves. In those years, the acting governor publicly declared the necessity of placing Champigny in a specialized facility. According to his words, this was the only way to protect society by controlling the patient's condition under the supervision of specialists. Financial experts calculated that Champigny's stay in the medical center required monthly state expenditures of about $2,500. The lawyers representing him insisted on the unconstitutionality of such long accommodation and demanded the release of their client. Meanwhile, The relatives of the young couple could not process what had happened. The events of that day changed the fates of many people forever. Liana's parents separated under the emotional burden. They fought long for justice through official instances. In the end, all participants were held accountable, except Champigny himself. He came to a medical facility with conditions that exceeded his previous standard of living. The situation triggered a broad public response. Discussions began about the necessity of lowering the age of responsibility to 16 years. After lengthy debates, in which both supporters and opponents of the initiative expressed themselves, these changes were legally enshrined. Champigny himself is to this day not in a correctional facility, but in a medical center. His indefinite stay there is based on a civil law order coordinated by the Medical Commission with the authorities. This decision is explained by the expert's assessment of his special condition. A renewed examination of his actions toward the couple is impossible due to the legal principle that prohibits double punishment for one act. Therefore, Champigny continues to remain under medical supervision in the comfortable medical facility.